Frieren Beyond Journey's End was created by Kanehiro Yamada and Tsukasa Abe. The manga was first serialized in 2020, and in 2023, it was adapted into an anime produced by Madhouse and directed by Keiichiro Saito. It's hard to pin down Frieren's exact genre. You could call it an epic fantasy saga complete with monsters and magic. You could call it a heartfelt, bittersweet drama which explores how we deal with love and loss. Or you could just call it a wholesome slice of life show about a cute little elf who can't stop falling for mimic chests.
散々罠だって言ったのにマジかよ。
However you hack it, this show was a huge success. Frieren has received massive critical acclaim and won Anime of the Year at the 2025 Tokyo Anime Awards. You'll notice how I said the 2025 Tokyo Anime Awards and not the 2025 Crunchyroll Anime Awards.
Bombastic side-eye. Criminal offensive side-eye.
But why is it so good? What about this show resonates so much with so many people? I mean, the art is amazing. The painted backgrounds look like illustrations pulled right out of a storybook, and the music is really good too. The score for this show has like this peaceful, atmospheric, like Nordic folk vibe that reminds me of like some iconic video game soundtracks like Skyrim or Zelda. Plus, the fight scenes are some of Madhouse's best animation yet. But I don't think that any of these elements alone can explain the gut punch that is Frieren's emotional impact. I think that what makes Frieren so special are actually the moments like these. I wanted to figure out why these montages were so effective at tugging my heartstrings, so I started to do some research and fell into a rabbit hole about film theory, the psychology of time, Death Note, and the socio-political history of Soviet-Russian propaganda. Yeah, we got a lot to cover. We should probably get started before I run out of time here. Part 1. Time. I'm gonna try and keep this pretty light on spoilers, but I should at least give you a rundown of the show's premise. Frieren Beyond Journey's End begins at the end of a journey. Frieren, along with her group of fellow adventurers, has just returned home after a 10-year-long quest to defeat the evil Demon King. Our heroes include Himmel, the dashing human hero, Aisin, the stoic dwarven warrior, and Heiter, a priest who spends most of his screen time getting hammered. Which actually reminds me. Alright. After one night of celebrating their victory, Frieren bids her fellow heroes adieu and hits the road again to continue studying magic and collecting spells. We're not even 10 minutes into this show, and we already get our first little montage. This is how the manga shows the time skip. Now, here's the anime's version. How much time do you think just passed during that montage? A couple weeks? A couple months? No, that was 50 years. Because Frieren is immortal and has already lived for 1,000 years, her perception of time is, in a word, whack. Seeing that montage and then realizing that it covers 50 whole years in the span of like 60 seconds really just emphasizes how big of a disconnect there is between Frieren's perspective on time and ours. The journey to defeat the Demon King took 10 years, so if we estimate that the average human lives to be 100 years old, which is pretty generous, by the way, then 10 years is 10% of a human's life. But Frieren has lived for 1,000 years. 10 years is only 1% of her life. There's actually a scientific term for the perception of time. It's called chronoception. I realize this sounds like a made-up superpower and or the best Christopher Nolan movie, but it is actually somehow a real thing that exists. Chronoception describes the subjective experience of time. It's studied in fields like neurology, psychology, and physics. And chronoception is not just for 1,000-year-old fictional elves either. It also applies to humans. Studies show that the older we get, the faster time seems to pass for us. After Frieren's 50-year jaunt through the countryside, she returns to the city to meet up with her old pals. She hasn't aged a day, but the same can't be said for her companions.
老いぼれてる。年を取った僕もなかなかイケメンだろ。
Frieren and the gang reunite and watch a beautiful meteor shower together. Himmel, drama queen that he is, immediately dies after this. I'm not kidding, it's like meteor shower, smash cut to his funeral. Good night, sweet prince. May you and your ginormous mustache rest in peace. So far, Frieren has exhibited the emotional range of a brick wall, but after Himmel is buried, she completely breaks down. Even though she traveled with Himmel for 10 years, she now realizes that she didn't know him that well. Which is a shame because Himmel was really trying to get to know her.
じゃあ後でフリーレンに僕が編み出したイケメンポーズ集を見せないとな。気遣う僕もなかなかイケメンだろ。イエイ！なーにやっとんじゃクソガキ！ぶっ殺してやる！僕だって見たかったのに！
殺しはまずいぞ。
Part 2. Emotion. This glove will not stay on. Oh, did I just rip it? Don't worry about that. Don't worry about anything you just saw. After Himmel dies, Heiter invites Frieren to come stay for a while and teach magic to his adopted daughter, Fern. Frieren agrees and spends about 4 years living with them and teaching Fern magic. During that time, we watch a montage pass.
This is what it looks like in the manga. And here's how it looks in the anime.
Anyway, a bunch more stuff happens after that, but it's not important right now, so I'm gonna skip past all that and go right to the next montage. On their way to the north, the gang ends up stranded in the middle of winter. It's too dangerous to cross the mountains in this weather, but luckily a monk invites them to come live in his cabin for a while until the snow thaws. The four of them spend about 6 months there waiting out the winter season, when we get another time skip and another montage.
This is the manga version, and this is the anime version.
Even though neither of the last two montages contain any dialogue, they've got some of my favorite storytelling moments in the show. They both look really peaceful and cozy. They're also nostalgic in a way, and without any words, I still find them really touching. That sort of reminds me of another piece of animation that really wrecked me emotionally. The opening 10 minutes of the Pixar movie Up. The first 10 minutes or so of Up are basically an act of psychological warfare painstakingly crafted by Disney animators to make you feel the saddest sad you've ever felt. I had to watch that scene like 5 different times to write this part of the script, and I'm not gonna lie, I cried at least 3 of those times. Award-winning filmmaker Mickey Wozny wrote a whole essay about this called Creating an Emotional Impact Without Dialogue, the case study of Pixar's Up. It's a great read, it's in the description, you should read it. Wozny points out a few techniques that Up used to stir emotion without any dialogue, and Frieren, surprise surprise, uses many of the same tactics. One of the first things that Wozny mentions is this use of something called the iconic moment. Iconic moments, as defined by the 2008 book Ideas for the Animated Short, are snapshots of ordinary life that the audience can relate to, which contain some sentimental meaning. So moments like a couple preparing a nursery for their baby who's on the way, a mother brushing her child's hair, a pair of friends gazing up at the moon together. You get my drift. Frieren's montages are filled with iconic moments like these. I particularly like this detail where Heitor is throwing his broccoli onto Frieren's plate, or this when he covers her up with a blanket. Even though these are very small, affectionate gestures and they're nothing out of the ordinary, they feel really genuine and almost intimate in a way. Wozni also talks about the power of repetition, how repeating the same action or going back to the same place over and over can create a sense of rhythm, routine, and emotional connection. During Frieren's time with Heitor and Fern, we see a pattern start to form. Frieren's reading in the study, they're practicing magic at the riverbed, they all sit down at the table to eat dinner together. The cycle repeats, slightly different each time, until Fern grows up and these characters have developed more of a bond with each other. Later on, when we get to the cabin, we keep going back to eating together or sharing a meal. Notice that the first time everyone sits down to eat, Kraft and Fern, the only two religious members of the party, are the only ones to pray before they eat. But the next time they sit down together, Stark is praying too. The last time they eat together, even Frieren, who is explicitly stated to not be religious, prays before she eats. That little shift in behavior is enough to show us that even though these people were strangers at the beginning, by the end of the winter, they've basically bonded. Another thing that makes these montages really effective, I think, is their sensory storytelling. You can almost feel the warmth here where Heitor is absorbing the sun, or feel the cold as Frieren is shivering in the snow. When we think of our past memories, we remember them not just visually, but physically. When I think back to my childhood summers, I can hear the sound of cicadas. I can smell that banana boat sunscreen.
Banana boat!
Those little sensory details are actually a huge part of my fond memories, and Frieren uses those senses in the exact same way. The soundtrack is also doing a lot of heavy lifting here. The music really lends itself to this peaceful, tranquil atmosphere, and speaking of music, we should probably get to the next part and talk about Part 3, Rhythm. One of the most important features of any film or any story really is the rhythm. How fast are things happening? How long does the scene linger before moving on to the next one? As you just saw, the montages in Frieren are very relaxed, almost melodic in pace, like a lullaby. Even though months or years are being condensed into a matter of seconds, these montages never feel like they're rushing. Now, let's contrast that with a masterpiece of modern cinema that is the potato chip scene from Death Note. Now, if you're not familiar with this scene, I'm very excited that I get to be the one to show you this absolute work of art.
With Ryuk's information and my preparations, I can continue to kill criminals whose names are broadcast on the news, while masquerading as a typical high school student studying for his entrance exams. Just watch me, El. I'll take a potato chip and eat it.
There is so much happening here. It is almost comically intense. We're fed close-up after close-up of shots on Light's face, his eyes, his pen, the bag of chips. Ryuk is breakdancing in the background. The edges of the screen have this motion blur to make things look sped up, but at the same time, Light himself is moving in slow motion. Not only are we hearing Light's edgy narration in the background, but there's also a full Latin choir. Oh, and in case you're wondering what they're singing, it's actually a song called Low of Solapism. The lyrics literally translate to, "Kira, our god, will be victorious." The potato chip montage conveys a sense of escalation, intensity, of Light spiraling out of control. Now, this is not a bad montage. From the bottom of my heart, I love this scene, but it has a very different feeling or emotional impact than the montages in Frieren. The slow and steady rhythm in Frieren's montages feels more like a lullaby. It kind of reflects the pace of the show as a whole. Even though Frieren is this big fantasy epic, it takes its time delivering the characters from one story beat to the next. There's a lot of quiet, peaceful moments, but then we get payoff in the form of these really big, bombastic fight scenes. Another thing about rhythm is that it is predictable. Typically, when you hear a piece of music, you have a general idea of how it's going to end. There's a sort of catharsis or satisfaction in knowing what you're going to hear next. There's also a certain discomfort or discordance if the sound doesn't end how you expect. In this flashback to the past, Frieren, Himmel, and the others come across a young demon girl on their journey to the north. Frieren wants to kill this demon on sight, but Himmel wants to spare her because she's a child. A loving family agrees to take in the demon and raise her alongside their daughter. This was such a brilliant, dirty little trick by the showrunners to teach us about what kind of monsters we're dealing with here. By now, the audience has already seen a couple of these montages, so we feel a sense of safety and security when this one starts to play. We are lulled into a false sense of peace, just like the demon fools this family into welcoming her into their home. By misdirecting us, by deceiving us like this, the showrunners really solidify the underhanded, mischievous tactics demons use to gain the trust of humans. It shows the audience that no matter what these demons say or do, they can never be trusted. Part 4, Soviet Montage Theory. I probably should have defined what a montage was at the beginning of this video, but I didn't. And look, we all arrived here just fine. Don't worry about it. If I ask you to picture a montage, there's a good chance you're thinking about something like this. Or this. Or this.
Let's get down to business.
Shout out to bisexual icon Shang for protecting and serving. This man is solely responsible for the millennial man bun epidemic, and for that, I thank him.
Woo! Sign me up for the next war.
The training montage might be pretty cliche, but it's a good example of what most montages are trying to accomplish. If you boil it down, a montage is just basically a group of multiple shots, which played one right after the other, conveys a larger cohesive scene. But how did the montage come to be? To figure that out, we have to go back to Russia in the year 1917. Within the span of 8 months, the Russian government has undergone not one but 2 revolutions. Ultimately, the Bolshevik Party takes control and installs socialist politician Vladimir Lenin in the seat of power. Okay, I know that this seems like a huge tangent, but sit tight, this is going to all make sense when we get to the part of the show where Frieren overthrows the bourgeoisie in season 7.
Okay, I'm done. I'll stop it with the anthem. It just fits so well with everything.
Shortly after Lenin takes power, a Soviet socialist and Bolshevik Party member named Lev Kuleshov directs his first movie, Twilight.
Twilight is considered a lost film, meaning although there is evidence that it was made, there are no known copies of the movie left. However, I was able to find a remake which is said to be pretty faithful to the original. Here's a short clip.
У тебя столько дисков? Что ты слушаешь?
Это Дебюсси.
Okay, for real, I'm done this time.
A couple years later, Lev conducts an experiment, which will later become a cornerstone of modern film editing. The experiment goes like this.
Kuleshov showed an audience this sequence of footage. When the audience responded to the film sequence, they all said they were impressed by how well the actor portrayed emotion in each scene. He seemed hungry when he saw the soup, sad when he saw the funeral, and turned on when he saw the pretty lady. But the actor wasn't acting at all. The audience was simply assuming his emotion based on the way that the footage was pieced together.
This experiment boils down to one simple idea. If you show two unrelated images in sequence, they can create a new meaning or evoke an emotion. This is known as the Kuleshov effect.
Montage means the assembly of pieces of film, which, moved in rapid succession before the eye, create an idea. Now we have a close-up. Let me show what he sees. He saw a woman holding a baby in her arms. Now we cut back to his reaction to what he sees, and he smiles. Now what is he as a character? He's a kindly man. He looks, girl in a bikini, he smiles. What is he now? The dirty old man. He's no longer the benign gentleman.
Something important to know about this is that the Kuleshov effect is not directly telling the viewer what to think or feel. The emotion or idea is not explicitly stated, it's only implied. The viewer is the one who is extracting meaning from what they see on the screen. Later on, in 1923, another Soviet filmmaker builds on Kuleshov's work. This guy's name is Sergei Einstein.
No, it isn't. Actually, this guy's name is Sergei Eisenstein, and I completely butchered his name when I was recording this video. My bad, Sergei.
Anyway, Eisenstein publishes an article titled "The Montage of Attractions." Now, this article is, not the easiest to read. Alright, let's see here. Put my glasses on. Here we go. Just a few words. We're off to a good start. The theatrical program of the prolet cult does not involve the utilization of the very institution of the values of the past or the invention of the forms of theater, but the abolition of the very institution of theater as such, replacing it with a showplace for achievements in the theater or with an instrument for raising the standard of training of the masses in their day-to-day life.
Wow, that's a lot of words. Too bad I'm not reading them.
Okay, what is the point of this article? Well, Einstein is basically saying that filmmakers should make movies which act as propaganda pieces to support the new socialist Russian government. And these movies need to be convincing enough to get the public on the government's side. So how does one make a movie which sways the opinion of the masses? Cast Jennifer Lawrence. No, I'm just kidding. Really, you could just tell an actor to stare into the camera and say, "Government bad and revolution good."
If you think for 1 second that the Capitol will ever treat us fairly, you are lying to yourself. Because we know who they are and what they do. This is what they do, and we must fight back.
Instead, Einstein argues, the best way to get the audience on your side is to show them how the government is bad so that they can intrinsically be motivated to agree with you. He says that if you want to convey an emotion or idea in film, it's much more effective to imply the idea without outright stating it. That way, the audience will extract the meaning themselves without being told what to think or feel. Einstein does this very well in his 1925 film, The Strike. In this movie, a bunch of factory workers suffering from awful working conditions go on strike. At the end of the film, the government calls in the military to subdue and kill the factory workers who are protesting. The movie closes with a really jarring montage. Einstein juxtaposes footage of soldiers shooting the factory workers with footage of a butcher killing a cow. Without a single line of dialogue, a very clear visual metaphor is conveyed. The government sees the working class as cattle to be slaughtered. But a montage doesn't have to imply a political idea. It can also convey an artistic or a philosophic idea. Let me give you an example. The 1995 film Ghost in the Shell opens with this montage, where various machines transform an artificial cybernetic body into a beautiful woman, indistinguishable from a flesh and blood human being. The animation is set to this haunting chorus of voices chanting a traditional Japanese love song. Their chanting brings a mystical, sacred quality to the scene. We aren't watching a robot being built. We're watching a marriage, a union between technology and human flesh. During this montage, the audience is forced to wonder, is this a human or is this a machine? And that question is basically the whole philosophical core question of the film. Where do we draw the line between man and machine? Can a machine have a consciousness? At what point does technology transform us from people into something completely different?
I mean, who knows what's inside our heads? Have you ever seen your own brain?
It sounds to me like you're doubting your own ghost.
What if a cyberbrain could possibly generate its own ghost, create a soul all by itself? And if it did, just what would be the importance of being human then?
Frieren is also using its montages to imply an idea without directly stating it. And what I think these little moments are trying to say is that ordinary life matters. All this simple, mundane stuff, sharing a meal with your loved ones, enjoying nature, giving and receiving small acts of kindness, all these things are what make up your memories. They are what makes up your life.
It's very difficult to tell a story about living in the moment or enjoying the simple things in life or appreciating what you have before it's gone without coming off as preachy or stilted or just flat out annoying. I'm looking at you, click by Adam Sandler. But Frieren never feels like it's trying to guilt trip you or beat you over the head with a moral of the story. If anything, Frieren comes off as poignant and bittersweet and beautiful because it tackles a very simple, perhaps even cliche idea with great subtlety and care.
We can intentionally choose to find beauty and happiness and coziness and simplicity. Ugh, I sound like a Hallmark movie. Whatever, just go watch Frieren if you haven't seen it already, and I don't know, call your mom or pet your cat or go outside and look up at the sky or something. I'm not the boss of you. I just now realized that I did this whole video dressed as Yubel without ever once talking about Yubel. Look, I had this cosplay for a con that I went to last year and I really didn't want to make another one, so here we are. Also, I just kind of relate to Yubel. We have like one or two things in common.
黙ったら死んじゃうような。
そうだね、死んじゃうかも。